Hello, welcome to the Pop Off PC Mag Show. We talk about video games, our favorite games, news, industry trends, opinions, all sorts of stuff about video games. And obviously, the big news in video games right now is that there are new consoles out, including the PlayStation 5. And one of the games on the PlayStation 5 that people cannot stop talking about is Bugsnax. Joining us is the president of Young Horses, the developer behind Bugsnax, Phil Tibitoski. Phil, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Jordan. Thanks for having me. How's it going?
It's going good. I just love promoting games that come out of Chicago. I went to school in Chicago and did a lot of games coverage there. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's great seeing you guys glow up like this.
I know it's interesting because there's like not. I mean, there's like a lot of developers in Chicago, but I feel like even though that is true, not many people know that they are in Chicago. Like NetherRealm with Mortal Kombat, or like Iron Galaxy, or other indies like Trinket with Battle Chef Brigade, or
Right.
William Cheer with Manifold Garden. There's a lot. There's a lot here.
Yeah, including your team's previous game, Octodad, which we've covered on the site before.
Mhm.
That game is a very strange premise. You're an octopus pretending to be a man, flopping around, doing all sorts of stuff. Bugsnax also has a very strange premise. Um,
Yeah.
how are you pitching it before it kind of went out to everybody? Like
So
what was your like elevator pitch?
it's interesting because I think it's kind of changed over time as we realized what people actually gravitated towards, and it would have that would have evolved over time if we had been able to actually go to like PAXs and stuff like that, show the game off. But essentially, it is a first-person adventure game in which you're trying to solve the mystery of what happened to an adventurer who went looking for these things called Bugsnax, which are half snack foods and half insect, at least in terms of how they look. It's as if a kid took a bunch of snack foods or foods in general and tried to mash them together to make them into like creatures or animals.
Cool. So what was it like? What was the inception for this idea? Like how did you arrive at this? That's what your next game is going to be. 'Cause it's been a few years.
Yeah, I mean, with Young Horses, our goal has always been to be an independent studio so that we could make things that if we pitched anywhere else besides internally within our company, other people would probably be like, no, we're not doing that. Like, we're not making that. Um, and and so we've always gone out of our way to make sure that we do something that other people are not likely to do. And it took like 6 or 7 months of prototyping and pitching internally to come upon the idea that is Bugsnax. But it was inspired by things like Pokemon Snap, Pikmin 3, even things like Bioshock, which may seem wild to people seeing what Bugsnax looks like, in that it's a colorful, bright, cute game. Um, but also things like Fern Gully or Apocalypse Now or Adventure Time, or it's kind of all over the map. Just anything that we either enjoyed as kids or have enjoyed recently have found their way into the game.
Cool. So you mentioned Pokemon Snap, or just kind of Pokemon in general as an
Mhm.
inspiration here. And yeah, I think one of the coolest things about it is just this variety of designs you have. Um, were there any? I guess two questions here. What are some of your like favorite designs, and then were there any that were cut or like dramatically changed throughout the process?
There was a sort of Cookie Mama type mechanic set that was in the game originally, because originally you would be on rails, first person, kind of like Pokemon Snap, capturing Bugsnax, and then you would take them back to your food truck, which is what you were driving in while capturing them, and prepare them to feed them to the grumpus people in Snacksburg in the city. And based upon uh, who ate what within that city, it would change the kind of social dynamic of their little town. And it quickly became evident that those were way too many mechanics for us to handle within one game with a team of our size, because we're only about 10 people. Um, and so we had to kind of pare it down until we got to where the game is right now, which I would argue is still too big of a game for 10 people. um, but yeah, we kind of had to drop some of those mechanics along the way, um, both because of scale and because of the kind of game we were trying to make and the kind of audience we were trying to target, or kind of like the kind of person we wanted to enjoy the game. Um, because at one point you were like, we were investigating like a sticker peeling type mechanic, and you were peeling Bugsnax to their like most essential parts
Oh
before
wow.
feeding
Okay.
them, and it was like horrifying. uh, and so we like tried that out, and then like maybe it was like
Horrifying. Just it was too complicated, or also just the implications of it.
both,
Okay.
both. And I mean, it was entertaining, but it was just that was like a different game for a different type of person. Even if we had figured that all out, so.
It's fine. Us. I mean, also, what was it like hearing that they're going to make a new Pokemon Snap, like as like, for the first time in like 20 years, like as you were developing this?
Yeah, we ran into actually a couple games recently that have all gone the Pokemon Snap route, including the new Pokemon Snap itself. And we were pretty, that's happened a couple times because I mean, we've been working on this game for about 6 years altogether. And it's happened a lot during development where you see a game that's like slightly like, or very like what you were going to do, but we didn't end up doing. And we're like, whew, like relieved every single time just because visibility is so important with a smaller game like ours. Or at least it feels small to us, even though in the grand scheme of things, in terms of like getting attention in the game space. And so we always want to make sure that what we're doing is as unique as possible so that it grabs people's attention.
Cool.
Um,
So you mentioned cutting this peeling mechanic because it was too horrific, partly because of just the implication of it.
yeah.
The tone of this game is something that I think is very fascinating. Don't want to get too much into like spoilers here, but I think there's like more going on than I think there's more going on than people will expect. I think even just from that trailer, people will be like people like again like my fiance was like, there's like more going on here, right? Like.
Yeah.
So was it like tough? Like what was it like kind of figuring out what the tone of this was going to be? Like considering what it ultimately is. Again, trying not to spoil things. But.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit. Our creative director, Kevin Zune, would probably be better for this question specifically, but um, I think something that was true with Octodad and is also true with Bugsnax is that we try and hit a wide variety of people in terms of what they can relate to. And so there are jokes and stories being told in this game that are particularly visible and I think relatable for younger people like kids. And then there are ones that maybe goes completely over a kid's head and maybe their parent enjoys. And we take that sort of approach, I guess not directly, but the best analog I can think of is Pixar movies or even Marvel movies, really, because there's stuff there for a younger audience and then there's stuff there also for an older one, while attempting to not have those things overlap in such a way that it would become unenjoyable for both, because kind of if you try to make something for everyone you end up making something for no one. So it's a tricky balance, but I feel like we're able to pull it off because it overlaps with our own tastes a lot. We all still enjoy stuff like Adventure Time or Steven Universe or Over the Garden Wall or things like that, which I don't know, I feel like adults oftentimes discount those types of cartoons as being for children, and so they must be simple. And they're really not. They're often tackling things that are kind of complex or a little bit deeper.
Yeah, it's like these kind of modern Cartoon Network shows that you mentioned is kind of what clicked in my mind. I was like, oh, that's
Hmm.
what this is going for. Yeah, and there's
Yeah,
also just how kind of like progressive it is in a lot of the ways the characters relate to each other. I thought
right.
that was pretty cool. But
Thanks.
speaking of the characters, this game has a lot of story. It has more story than I was expecting, and
Yeah.
a lot of voice acting with some pretty famous game voice actors. Yuri Lowenthal was in Spider-Man. He's also on PS5. Deborah
Mhm.
Wilson, who I love since Mad TV. They put her in as
I
many games as
know.
possible.
When we found
Um,
out that we were getting Deborah, I was like super stoked because of also having seen her on Mad TV
That's great. That's so
when I was
cool. So yeah,
younger.
so what was it like kind of working with this kind of this bigger cast? And I mean, like, definitely bigger than Octodad for sure.
Yeah, I only got to work with them a little bit. I wasn't on the kind of team that was in the sessions most of the time. I was only in some of the auditions, but we definitely could not handle this on our own, and we ended up kind of initially pitching people and voice actors that we knew, like Frida Wolf, who's in the game, who's Agabel. And Frida is like a good friend of ours and has been since Octodad, because she was Stacy in Octodad. And uh, we kind of just went to her with our, like, we put all of our like all little sides together, like the script for the audition and stuff, and brought them to her. And she was like, you guys don't really know what you're doing, do you? Like, because we're trying to do this on our own. And eventually she led us to work with Bright Skull Entertainment, who had worked on Tacoma and some other stuff in like voice direction. And so we worked with them, and they helped us cast and record everything, and edit and produce all of that, because it was a huge undertaking. Because I think there's like over 20 voice actors altogether between the people who are playing the Grumpuses and the people who are playing the Bugsnax, and sometimes those overlap. So it was a wild experience, and it's been really cool to work with people who have also been on either like these huge games or in huge TV shows or whatever that we all liked. It's weird to have gone from Octodad to this, for sure.
Nice. Now, I think this is a game we'd be talking about regardless, because it's just such a bizarre premise. But a big reason why we're talking about it now is that it's also launching with the PS5.
Yeah.
We're recording this like the day after, so congrats. I'm sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
You've been doing a lot. So what's that whole process been like? How'd you kind of get coordinating with Sony, like seeing like this could be a launch title for your next console? Like, yeah, what was that like?
I mean, our release cadence for our games just seems to be on a console cycle amount of time for some reason, or at least we seem to be lining up well with it. But we had worked with PlayStation on releasing Octodad for PS4 and things like that in the past, and had even been talking to them before that. And they had been a fan of the student Octodad back in 2010. And so we've kind of cultivated that relationship over time. They've been very supportive. And when we kind of realized, well, we think the PlayStation 5, just based on our own estimates, it will probably release holiday 2020. That seems like it makes sense. We reached out to them and we're like, hey, here's our weird new game. We think it's probably going to line up with when you guys are likely to announce your next console. And of course, they wouldn't tell us that was true or not, but they were just like, we should check it out, and like, so I think it was GDC 2017 or 18. The game was still like very rough. And I think at the time, I don't know if it was John Drake or someone mentioned, was just like, we're just like, is there like a gas leak in your office or something? Because they saw that initial thing and were just like still kind of, I guess, blown away by how weird it was. Even then, but from there they were just were like, helped us push the game along and get it out the door in time for launch, which was an interesting experience. Never made a console launch game before, so let alone this is just our second game ever. So
and also for it's gonna be like free on PS Plus for PS5 owners, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's cool. Kind of just counter programming to all these like huge, gritty, like very depressing in a lot of way.
Yeah, I think
games.
I assume they wanted to kind of diversify and make sure they had something there on day one for everybody. So yeah, it's been nice to be there alongside huge stuff like Miles Morales or Demon Souls or Sackboy or things like that.
Cool. So you mentioned just kind of your release cadence has sort of just kind of fallen. It kind of just sort of synced up with console releases. So do you think it'll be like 6, 7 years until your next game? Is the team already thinking of new ideas?
We've been thinking of new ideas since like mid Bugsnax development, maybe even sooner than that or earlier than that. I don't know. I don't know if it will be another 6 or 7 years. I hope not, because it's a long time to be working on one thing. Especially when we didn't announce it until like June of this year. It's a long time to wait to see if most people will like or dislike something. Yeah, we have a lot of ideas of what we might do next. I'm hoping it only takes 2 or 3 years instead, but we'll see.
Cool. Well, we'll look forward to it. But yeah, congrats again on the launch. Bugsnax is out now for PS5, PC. I reviewed it on PC. You can read that on PC Mag. But yeah, Phil, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Cool.
Peace.